for anyone listening to this or watching this, this is our first time actually chatting. So I'm pretty excited about this, and it'll be pretty cool. I mean, you reached out to me on Instagram for obvious reasons. I just talked to another marathon runner, and that's kind of how we connected. But I'm interested to hear a little bit more about you, man. And I guess we can start with maybe why you wanted to reach out to me.
Oh, yeah. I'd say first off, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. You giving me the time. And I reached out to Mark after I saw his conversation with Such Lati. They had an amazing back and forth, and I reached out to him for obvious reasons. One of those reasons being for RIchstone Family. So tomorrow as in April 5th, I'm going to be launching a fundraiser for $25,000 for RIchstone Family. RIchstone Family is an organization in Los Angeles, California, where I live, that has been around since '74, and they're like a grassroots organization that deals with child abuse and domestic violence. And I've been working with them for 5-6 years, and we raised about $2,600 through a 72-hour race that I did in December. And this year I wanted to go and raise $25,000 for them through a series of races that I have, and just trying to get the word out there, man. And I just want to do everything I can with all the crazy shit that I do.
That's wicked, man. And dude, with someone like that, like just from what you said just now, there's so much to kind of unpack from that, because it's like, well, why that, why that specific charity, why that movement, but also like why going about it this way, like the whole like marathon running thing, like how did you get into that? So like, I don't know, like kind of, because for me, when I first opened up your profile, I was curious. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, who's this guy reaching out to me? And the more I looked, I was like, all right, this guy kind of seems legit. Like he seems, and I was kind of looking through it. But a lot of the times, like people have these questions like, why? Like, what? Like, how did this all start? So I don't know, like how you kind of want to tell your story, or if you have kind of like a full story that you consider, but I'm interested to hear about how did this start?
I guess for me, my background started with running about 4 years ago. So to just give a bit of a background, I've never been like an athletic guy. I was failing the fitness test year round every year when I was in elementary school and high school. Just couldn't do push-ups, couldn't do sit-ups. Last kid on the track. And I was obese for most of my life, struggled with food addiction, depression, anxiety, various things. And I picked up running about 4 or 5 years ago, just as kind of an outlet, something that I could do to just cope with mental health struggles. Just a lot of things to unpack that were going on in my life at that time, and all culminated. And I went out and I ran a quarter of a mile, and I got sick and I walked home. And it's just been like, from there it was like a 5K, and then it was like a 10K and a half. And then during the pandemic, my marathon got canceled, and I'd been doing through hiking and decided like, well, what if I run trails? And turns out that it wasn't a new invention. People have been trail running for a long time. So I jumped into ultra marathons, and been doing distances about 100 mile and above since then. And just want to test my personal limits. And the whole charity thing just kind of fell into it as like, if people see you doing these crazy, amazing feats, then it's like they can see that you're passionate about a cause through your actions, and they'd be willing to donate a couple dollars, or maybe just like share the news, or just see how you're passionate about it, and just maybe have their own awakening.
Yeah, man, like because that journey in and of itself, like that kind of, well, there's a couple things I want to speak about there, because there's a few things. The first one is like how difficult it is to just get started with something like that. Because I had a similar experience. Like I'm not an ultra marathon runner at all, But I just did my first marathon, like 42 kilometers,
Oh,
or
awesome.
and that was over winter break. I did it on Christmas Eve, and that was the first time that I had done anything. Like I'd done a half marathon before I did that, and then kind of similar to how you spoke about it. Like I remember the first time I started running, I was like a heavy smoker. And just running to the end of my block, I was like throwing up. Like I was like sick. And I just turned around and I'm like, man, I don't want to do
Oh,
this
wow.
ever again. It was so bad. Like, and then, well, that was my motivation to quit smoking cigarettes, right? I was like, man, I think of myself like I'm a young, healthy guy. I'm like early 20s at the time. I'm like, there's no reason for me to just run a block and then start feeling like this. Like but I could only imagine, like, because for me to make the connection between physical and mental health took me probably, I mean, I started struggling with depression at a pretty young age, and I was working out for a lot of that. And I never made the connection between my mental and physical health holistically. Do you know what I'm trying to get at? Do you get what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Oh, I think I definitely do. Like for me, it was when I started working out in college, it was not for mental, physical reasons. It was more for just like I wanted to lose weight and I got unhealthily skinny. And it was primarily physical. But I get what you're saying. When I picked up running 4 years ago, I didn't do it for physical reasons. I picked it up primarily for mental health. I just needed an outlet.
Yeah, and I guess more what I'm trying to say is like I mean, like I like my with my story, like I started struggling like with depression at a really, like it was probably like 9 years old when I first started showing signs, and my teachers were starting to talk to my parents, kind of thing, for things that I was saying in the classroom. And then I started lifting weights in high school because I played rugby and all these other sports I want to be better at. I want to have big biceps. I wanted girls to like me, like there was all those other aspects. So I was like, okay, I'm going to lift weights. And even then I considered that, I was like, oh, the gym is my therapy kind of thing. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until like the last couple years where I started to have this mindset shift where I was like, okay, well, what if I try things like yoga? What if I try things like running? What if I branch out of my comfort zone a little bit more and I start working out in terms of like, how do I actually become healthier as opposed to how do I get bigger biceps? Like there was a transformational shift mentally for me where I had to start thinking about like, I'm not moving for like this vain reason anymore of like wanting to have abs or big biceps. Like it's more like I'm moving so that I can move better for the rest of my life and feel better and process, struggles differently. And because there's something that goes on, like, and I only had a taste of it. Like, I don't think I've even figured this out. But when I was like running the marathon of dealing with struggles and then being able to push past that to finish the marathon, like kilometer 30 out of 42, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah, I
what I mean?
bet.
So
You
just
hit the
that,
wall probably, right? I bet.
right. But we hit walls every day with our mental health. Do you get what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like it's like that mentality shift of being able to look at struggles as something that's going to make you better as opposed to something that's going to break you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Like you hit those mental walls all the time, mentally. And then like just being able to connect those. I think if I wasn't able to make those connections, like you said, I wouldn't even be able to do the things that I do, the ultra marathons that I do. I think there are certain days where I feel like that connection is so powerful that if you're just in a mental rut, like you just don't want to do anything. Like your body can just shut down. But at the same time, on the opposite end of that spectrum, like you pushing through 30 to 42 and realizing that those struggles are mental and physical struggles and making that connection and realizing that that discomfort can help you grow. Um, it's a powerful thing, man.
Yeah. And well, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I'm sure that I don't know, well, I guess it's a better way to just ask than to assume what you think. But
Yeah.
um, what I was gonna say is like, does this shit get easier? Like, so like you run 100 miles. Is it easy to run 100 miles for you now?
No. No, definitely not. I think Well, I think every 100 mile that I've done is like a different story. Um, I I don't think that the distance gets easier. I think that in a lot of ways it can get tougher because maybe your intensity gets tougher. But if we're talking like for 100 miler, I think those last 50 miles are like 90% like mental than they are physical. Uh, so I find that I've done 200 milers and I thought maybe in my head that, and then I did the 72-hour race. I thought maybe in my head, like I can kind of like get through a 100 no matter what. And I realized that, I mean, for physical reasons, I had an injury, but I realized that that's not always true because I DNF'd my last one 3 weeks ago. Um, and I realized that a lot of times, like the key to your mind will like change because it's inevitable, right? Like in your marathon, I'm sure like at mile 30, you started hear or like kilometer 30, you started hearing those voices in your head. You start hearing the voices in your head telling you like you can't do this, like why are you doing this? You
It was
know?
like it was sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to
Oh
say
yeah.
it
Yeah.
was more like mental alerts of physical signs. Like I kept thinking like I feel like my calf might actually tear off. Like there was little things like that. Like like when your
Yeah.
muscles start getting tight and you're like, okay, I think it's starting to peel off. Like I think like this is it. Like there was times like that because I had fractured my heel earlier in the year. In the summer last year. So by winter time, I was like, man, I don't know if my Achilles is actually going to stay on. Like I was like, so for me, it was like it seemed like a physical battle at the time, but looking back, it was definitely a mental battle,
Yeah, it's
like
crazy
what
how
you're
the
saying.
mind, yeah, it's crazy how the mind tricks you like that too. It'll take like everything that's in its toolbox and just like try to play with you. Like I had an injury on my right knee early on, and I've had an Achilles injury and multiple bad ankle injuries on my left. And that'll always come up at some point. It'll be like, yeah, like, oh, your knee's feeling a little shaky. Are you sure you can go another 30 miles? Can you go another 40 miles? And just like, and that just is my going back to my point is that 100 miler is always going to be 100 miles. And I feel like every race is just like a different story. Like you can fix certain things like your nutrition and like you can work out and like uh, do all the right things. But at the end of the day, like it's always going to be a battle of the mind.
Yeah. And I just think sometimes like even for myself, like I think of, like for example, like how many 100 miles have you done? How many times have you run 100 miles in one sitting?
How many times have I run 100 miles in one sitting? I would say probably three.
So like after 3 times of doing that, like successfully, it's like how like I from the average person, from the layman looking at you, I think like, oh, walking up to the start line, this guy knows he's going to run the 100 miles because he's done it so many times. Like we kind of look at other people and we think like, oh, he's done it. Maybe he's done it a couple of times. Like he's good. That's not a challenge for him anymore. Like we kind of look out and see that. But I know like for myself, there's so many times where even working in construction or dealing with these battles, like every case is different. Every circumstance is different. Every time it's going to be a grind or a battle. Like I even think about that with yoga classes. Like there's yoga classes that I've done on YouTube and I've done them before. And then when I start them, I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this time. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like,
Yeah.
and that's like a 1 hour thing. Or like running 100 miles takes all day, man. Like, and it's like, what could happen 2 hours in?
Oh, yeah. Like the longer you're on your feet, the more likely you are that something's going to happen. But that's what all the old heads will say is that it's all about like problem management. I think it's the same for anything that you do. Like it could be construction, it could be running that marathon, it could be going to yoga. In life, problems are going to arise. And it's like a microcosm, 100 miler of like what life is like, solving problems. And also, I think going back to what you said, like in a way, like knowing that for me, like knowing I'm going to walk up and I'm going to do 100 miles, but also knowing that this is going to suck, it's going to hurt, but this is what I signed up for. Um, I bet, did you feel that way when you did your marathon? Like when you walked that start line, did you know like it's going to suck at this point and just got to be ready to power through that?
It's kind of funny. When I did it, I was actually only planning on going for 30 kilometers. I kind of gave myself a little bit of a mental cop out because I had run the half marathon, so that's 21K. And
Mhm.
then my goal was to run a marathon, but I was too scared to say it. So I kept saying I'm going to run the 30K because it's kind of in the halfway point between the half marathon and the full marathon is 30K is like the halfway. So I kind of gave myself the mental cop out of I'm going to run 30K. And I was like, I can run 10K and I can run 21K. So I can definitely do the 30K. That was like, it was like, it's going to be achievable. And by the time I had hit the 30K, I was like, I'm being such a pussy. I need to just power through this and finish the 42K. Like the full marathon was your goal. What you said was 30 to everybody else, but deep down your goal is the full marathon. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Even if you finish, you're not even going to be proud. You know what I mean? Like you got to go for the full marathon. So that was, I gave myself a mental cop out and I had to ask myself about like, why wasn't I as proud as I was? Because I was like, I almost didn't do it, you know? And I try, even though I knew I was capable, I didn't want to even say it out loud or commit to anybody. I was scared to tell my girlfriend about it or any of my friends, because I didn't think I was going to be able to achieve it, even the 30K or even the full marathon. I didn't think I'd be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when I went into my 100, heck, even when I went to my first 50K, I couldn't say it out loud. Like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I just told myself, like, I just want to go, like, to use a cliche, like, I just want to go the distance. Like, I just want to get through this day and see what I can do. And I did. I kind of had the same approach to all my races too. Like my 100 miler was kind of my first one was the same. Like I just want to finish, like no matter what, I just want to get through this. And I finished that race. That first 100 miler, I'll never forget. I finished it. What they call in ultra running, they call it DFL, dead fucking last. I finished with like 1 minute to spare.
That's dude, even just like the way you speak about that, like running the 100 miles is like, dude, I can't even comprehend that, dude. I had there's a lot of things. I yelled at my buddy, actually. I yelled at my buddy. I'm like, man, there's so many pains about running a marathon that you didn't tell me about that I'm mad about now. Like, I'm like, man, jump in the shower with all the chafing after, bro. Like,
Um,
I it's uh it's a funny thing though, because I was really upset with myself about how I felt like I was selling myself short, because I was like, I didn't even know about the full marathon. I thought I couldn't achieve the 30K, but I completed the full marathon. So it's like, imagine, and I'm sure you've had those thoughts where it's like, imagine if I actually believed in myself,
yeah,
for a day. Like, imagine what I could have achieved.
yeah, like a lot of my life was almost like, what if I can't do this? I'm gonna embarrass myself. Like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, it was a lot of like mental cop outs, as you'd say. And then I got to a certain point where I stopped. I told myself, like, I'm tired of asking myself this. Let me try to ask, what if? Like, what if I can do this? For the 72-hour race, depending on your perspective, my perspective, like you could look at it as a failure, because my 72-hour race, I was going for 200 miles. That's what I told everyone. In my head, I was telling myself, okay, maybe I can get 210. I finished with about 170. Uh, but the only reason I got there was because I was shooting those moon balls and I was telling myself, what if I can do this crazy thing? Like, what if?
Yeah. And before that, what was the most you ever ran before? The 100 miles?
100 miles. Yeah. Yeah, so I got to 100 and it was just like I actually told myself I remember telling myself right then and there like it's all uncharted territory from here. Like whatever happens now is whatever happens, but I'm not going to stop moving.
Yeah. And the last thing I was gonna say about that is just the idea of like, if you sell yourself short and you like kind of look for the cop out, like yeah, I sold myself short. I was looking for 30K. And then okay, yeah, I was able to push past and hit the 42. But I kept thinking to myself, like, what would have happened if I had shot for like 100 and hit 50? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it's like, okay, you achieved X amount by not even believing in yourself, but then look at like your results. Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna get like 210, 215. And sure, you hit like 170, but that's like literally still almost double the most you've ever done.
When you were a chain smoker and you did your first run and the one where you like wanted to like barf and like
Yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
want to do it, like did a 5K and a 10K seem like a lot to you? Like did it seem like forever?
I didn't 10K didn't seem achievable. That seemed like Olympian level to me. That was like, there's no way I'll be able to run a 10K.
That's what I think I realized is that there was a point where I thought a 5K was my Everest, and then it was a half marathon, and then it was a 50K. And I just realized how crazy it is how your mind can frame certain things and then just tell you like this is the pinnacle of achievement. And then you get to that next thing, it's like this is the pinnacle achievement. And it's just like this once you do the marathon, like who's to say that you're not going to do a 50K or a 50 miler and then you're going to look back at that marathon and you're still going to remember it exactly how it was, but then you're going to realize that you were capable of so much more than you thought you were.
Yeah, it's also important for anybody listening to this. It's also important to talk about the difference between miles and kilometers because when he talks about like 50 miles, it's so different than 50K.
Oh
It
yeah.
is so different. You guys can do the conversions yourself, but that's like, yeah, when he's talking about doing 50 miles and 50, like 100 miles, I'm like, dude, I couldn't even do 50 kilometers right now. Like 42 kilometers, like it took me about almost 5.5 hours for the marathon. And I think no, actually, no, no, no. I finished just over 5 hours.
Oh, that's really
And
good.
and it did not feel like it, bro. It was like the first, I think I did it in two different stretches on my app because I was only going for the 30K. So when I thought I did one of them in 30, the other one was 12. The first 30 kilometers, I think, took me like through 2.5, 3 hours. And then the last 12K also took me like 2 hours almost. Like it was like the last 12 kilometers took me the same amount of time as the first 30 because it was just like, shit, dude, I got to walk a little bit. I got to just like kind of gain
Yeah.
myself back. Like there was just so much that, yeah, yeah, Sachin even roasted me a little bit for my preparation for that race.
What'd you do?
Yeah,
What was your goal?
I literally just told you what I did. I just trained 10Ks. I was like, if I can run a
Wow.
10K, I can run 10K 5 times. That was my ideology. That was the way I thought. I was like, as long as I could do the 10K, I know I can do that 3, 4 times. That was,
That's kind of the false mindset that I gave myself too. It's true in some cases, but I told myself after I did my 50K, like, well, I just got to do it 3 times over and I'll do 100 miles.
yeah,
And that was kind of like I wouldn't say false bravado, but that was kind of like the tried to inject some confidence in myself that I could do
yeah.
it, you know?
And it's kind of yeah, it's a powerful feeling to think that way because it does work sort of. Because for the first 10K, I was like, okay, I'm good. I still feel fresh. This is just, and then the last 10K, I was like, this is nothing like the first 10K. That was
Yeah.
where it was like, I'm jacked up. Like it was like I couldn't even describe the feeling. And so I know that you couldn't even describe your version because it would be way more intense. But I remember thinking, like, I don't even feel like I'm running anymore. That's how I felt. Like, I was like, I literally
Yeah.
don't even feel like this is my body doing this. Like, I kind of
Like
like
out of
almost,
body experience almost.
yeah, yeah. Like legit, like, cause it was like painful. Do you have any tattoos? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got a
Okay.
half sleeve right here. So, and I've gotten,
So
yeah.
I was gonna say it's kind of similar to doing like like if you sit through a 5 hour session of tattooing, like that's kind of what I relate it to. Like it's painful the whole time, but there's hours or minutes where you just kind of like disassociate. You're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
legit happening to me right now.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you mean because I've been through like an 8 hour session before and a couple of
Yeah.
those. And I think at some point, like you just like it's out of body. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy.
That's the only other time I felt like that. I've done an 8 hour session was the longest tattoo. So I don't think I'll do that again. But I remember like 4 or 5 hours deep. Like it didn't even feel like I was getting a tattoo at that point. Like it's like just the pain was just like not numb because you feel everything, but like it's like disassociative. Like you kind of like, oh, that's my arm getting a needle in it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like it's the same way with the 100 races. Like I think the longer the distance gets, the more of those ebb and flow cycles that you have. And with the 100 miler and the 200s, like you go through several of them. Like you just go through this point where it's like, oh, this sucks, like everything sucks, like your nutrition is bad and like you're feeling nauseated or like you have a hot spot in your foot. And then like it's just like managing that, and then next thing you know, you're riding like this amazing high for like the next 10 miles and you're feeling great.
yeah, it's pretty nuts, man. I wanted to, what I did want to actually pull this back to a little bit was talking more about, and we did touch on it a little bit, but like how this translates into like, because obviously you can help other people's mental health by raising money and drawing attention because people are like, who's this fucking guy running
Mhm.
100, 200 miles? Like, what's going on? And for someone like me who's like tried to do a smaller version and struggled, I'm even more like, holy shit, these guys are superheroes. Like it's like it seems more crazy because I've tried the small scale and it was hard. So like just hearing about these things amazes me.
You know what's
And
crazy? Just quickly to interrupt you, what's crazy, Mark, is when you said these guys are superheroes, that's crazy that you say that because I still remember that as being my absolute first comment when I heard about the 100 miler. That's exactly what I said. These guys are superheroes.
it doesn't seem human, dude. And like, dude, I've read Goggins' book a couple times. I follow all this, like I probably follow a lot of similar guys that you follow. And like hearing about them, they literally seem like not even of this. Like, I'm like, are these guys human like me? Like, do they have the same, like, what's going on? And then you hear half of them have organs that fail and shit like that. And you're like, dude, these guys are doing it with hearts that are worse than my condition. Like when like the Goggins thing in his book, I don't want to ruin the book for anybody, but finding out that he has got like a heart
The
condition.
hole in his heart. Yeah.
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 It's like, yo, how that's like after he's done all this shit. Like it's
Yeah.
not like that was like while he's still obese. Like it's like, wait, he's been doing all this with a fucking heart problem. Like
It's crazy.
it doesn't seem human. And so like it's so like for sorry to rein this back in, um like when people hear about these things, like it kind of like it's like, well, how does this play a role in your own mental health? Like, because I'm assuming by now, like the way that you speak about it, it sounds like it's kind of like in your past, but I know for myself, even the trials and tribulations that I've gone through still haunt me to this day in some degree. It's less like I've been able to abolish them and more like I've been able to deal with them. Like you were talking about like problem management, but how has like kind of marathon running or ultra marathon running kind of translated into your mental health? Like, because it that been like the pinnacle factor? Was there any other catalysts?
Well, I think first off, I think for mental health struggles, I absolutely agree that for me, even like
I
it
guess
might
sorry to
seem like,
interrupt, but I was gonna say maybe we could go into even defining what mental health struggles look like for you. Cause I we haven't even spoken much about that and I don't want to make assumptions, but like without prying too much, I guess you can kind of share a little bit about, maybe what you dealt with and how it
yeah,
changed or
like you, I suffered depression from an early age, probably like 9, 10. That translated over into like coping with food, and that eventually turned into a food addiction, which led to obesity. I suffered anxiety. I always felt like, for me, the biggest struggle was always feeling like I never achieved the validation that I was looking for. And that's something that I felt like I've People pleaser was a role that I took on for a long point in my life, because I never felt like I achieved that validation early on. Um, so that was probably the pinnacle of like my struggles. And then just, um, I think for me, the depression wasn't even like, sometimes it was situational, but a lot of times for me, it was just imbalances. Like it's just like what you call, like I describe it as like the ebb and flow of like waves. Like I'll have like periods like I just did in like March where like I'll go through like a couple 2 3 weeks of like I'm just in this like really low valley, and then like I'll just come out the other side, and it can take like, I don't think there's one form that my depression takes. Like sometimes I can work it out by doing ultras or like running or exercising. Other times, like it's like one of those like I just want to lie in bed type of days. But that's kind of an overview of it.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with that actually, because I feel that way as well. I think for a lot of my life it was kind of more like like a crippling, like kind of like a dark cloud following you around, and
Yeah.
and it's taken a different shape now. It kind of haunts me in similar ways that you've kind of been speaking about, like where I'll get like the 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes even a month, where I'm low energy, or I'm just not really executing on a lot of the things that, and it kind of builds up. And then I it could be like maybe I lose a little bit of discipline with finances, and credit card bills start piling up, and I'm like, fuck, I stress about that. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's like I haven't paid enough attention to the relationships in my life, and it just kind of those dwindle away, or friends treat you differently or speak to you differently. And then there's always those kind of weird kind of weeks, or couple weeks, and it's just being able to snap back into that. Like that seems to be the biggest struggle for people, because I think a lot of us gravitate towards negative coping mechanisms when we feel like that. Like when you get, so for example, like you were saying, like March was a tough month for you.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people, when they have those tough months, they kind of fall off, or even I do, like I fall on old habits or bad habits that we used to have. Do you ever feel like do you ever feel like you lose that maybe part of your identity of like, hey, like maybe I'm not this person, or maybe this isn't my path? Like, do you ever feel like that?
Lose my identity.
Well, I guess like when you have those bad months, like what does that look like for you? Because that's how I have a tough time dealing with those
it
things. But
it for sure like it for sure like oh, it shakes my foundation. I think that's something that like, well, like it's lasted throughout my life. Like I would say that my mental health struggles, I've learned to, I guess the word is I've learned to compartmentalize them. Like I know that they're there. I feel like ultras have helped me become more vulnerable with them. Like I can speak about more things, like simply saying that like I can be grateful for all the things that I have in life, but I can still go from like being totally happy to having the occasional suicidal thought. Like that's something that I would not have been able to say 10 years ago. But yeah, like man, like it totally, like sometimes you go through moments where like it'll shake your entire foundation. And I think it's really normal to question everything you built, everything you are, and wonder who the real you is. And I think life is a struggle. Life is a constant battle of like trying to like shore that foundation and kind of build it and also adapt it, because like you said, depression changes, and it's happened to me like where it's gone from like maybe a dark cloud, which is kind of what it was in my past, to like taking other forms.
yeah, and I mean, like you talked about it with like, say, like food addiction and such. But there's a lot of people that they get into, say, like ultra marathon running or whatever it could be. And I don't know, this is just like I'm pulling this out of my ass, but like, for example, like say that bad habit creeps back into your life. That's something that kind of goes directly against marathon running. So you would have like this combat of like, I'm
Yeah.
overeating, I'm gaining weight, I'm doing this. but this is who I am. And it kind of creates this conflict of like, am I actually this guy, or am I the guy that eats a lot? Or am I not the guy that eats a lot? Am I the ultramarathon? Like, why do I have this gravitational pull towards this tendency? You know, like it's kind of like it creates a conflict of interest almost. And I feel like we all deal with that. Like even like for myself, like, you know, say going back to smoking cigarettes or whatever it could be, like have that, if that happens, then it's like, then I'm faced with this crisis of, am I this healthy guy that cares about my body? Or am I this smoker? Am I both? Like it kind of, you know, we go back to these kind of like, I hear a lot of my friends, the reason I bring this up, I guess I should say, I hear a lot of my friends that, you know, have struggled with like substance abuse in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And part of their identity becomes, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I'm this, I'm that. And we kind of deal with that identity conflict of like, okay, yeah, that's a part of you, right? But where are you going? Or what are you trying to focus on now? Like I kind of, do you see where I'm coming from? Like where
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, like those things like food addiction, I was drinking a lot in the last couple years, and April is actually a year of sobriety. Um,
really, congratulations, man.
thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, going back to your point, like I think that drinker, like food addict, like obese, um, those things are always going to be a part of my identity, but I feel like it's a dimmer switch. Like it's like light switches. And I feel like right now, ultras and like this part of my identity is like the brighter switch. But if I'm not careful, then it's like a constant struggle that you always deal with. Like occasionally, like you'll feel that gravitational pull, that other switch will try to like get brighter. And you just have to like, I guess for me, like it's all about like accepting that that's going to be there and riding that wave for what it is, and using the other brighter light to combat those dimmer lights.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, like I think if it wasn't for ultras, because I think you've probably experienced this too in your races, but like when you're, and even in life, like when you're in a moment of like discomfort, um, there's a lot of brutal honesty. A lot of things come out of you. Um, some of them might be true, some of them might not be true, but a lot of things come out of you. So I think for me, like being able to do these 100 milers and just be out there in this pain for so many hours has forced me to really be more vulnerable with myself and really just have like a higher level of brutal honesty that's gratefully it's been tough because it's like opening a can of worms, but at the same time, like it's work that I got to do, and like it's helped me connect with people better, and it's helped me share my story better and help other people better.
That's beautiful, man. And I like the way you talk about like it's such a cliche, and I hate hearing this stuff. Like it truly is. Well, it truly is about like balance, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like I you know, for me the running is a symbol. That's the way I look at it, because for
Mhm.
me, if I had to identify the theme, it's more about discipline. That's where I pride myself on, and that's what my close friends see me as. You know, I'm like a kind of
Yeah.
guy that no matter what, I'm always up before 5 o'clock, like that kind of thing. Or I might not be the strongest guy, but I'm hitting my workout 7 days a week, and nobody can take that from me. Like that's kind of where my mentality is a lot of the time. Is like, look, I'm not going to be the best guy. I'm not going to be the fastest, won't be the strongest, definitely not the fucking smartest, but I'll show up, and I can show up better than other people can. Like that's the way
Yeah,
you
same.
know,
And
so that's
you'll be 1% better every day.
100%. But there's those times where my discipline slips,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? And so then I have this in my head, an argument. It's like, am I the disciplined guy or am I the lazy guy? Because the first 18 years of my life, 23 years of my life, I sat around and smoked weed and cigarettes and just wanted to party and make jokes. Like that was, you know, so am I a disciplined guy? Because nature says I'm not. And so I go through sometimes like those identity, and I realize it's like, Well, bro, it truly is about the balance. Like it's like
Yeah.
the ability to turn off and on that discipline. And that's kind of where I was actually going to go to this next, but I want to hear what you had to say about that.
About discipline. Yeah.
Just about that identity, like conflict of like, when we fall off.
Just that, like any other person, it happens to me. It happens to me every once in a while, like especially when I go through dark storm clouds like that, in like a month of March, where there will be occasional moments where my brain wants to black out and just like eat something good or like eat my favorite snack or something like that, or just order a pizza and like eat the whole pie. And like
Oh,
that part of me will always exist. And I think that it's really about balance, but when it comes to discipline, it's more about consistency than intensity. Like you can go and do a amazing, and this is my view on this. There are like a million people who are like, you know, probably at a higher level than me physically or something like that. But um, my point on this is that like you can go out and do a 10-hour workout or like something gnarly or crazy. And then like you can slip the next 3, 4 weeks and just go back into all those old habits. Or you can tell yourself, you can make the choice to say, hey, I'm going to wake up every day and do 5 minutes of yoga 365 days a year. And that in itself is like, it creates a habit. The consistency creates the habits. And those habits will create that foundation, which is like that brighter light. And those will be things that you can use to combat the other parts of your personality. Accept them, deal with it, and then remind them that this is kind of like the identity that you're building now.
yeah. And just to touch on that as well, I think it's such a beautiful point because I think like and I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I know guy like for myself, like when I have like a mission or an idea in my head, I'm like, I'm going all out. Right. You know what I mean? And so like say for example, starting to work out or starting to do like if I'm like, hey, I'm gonna start working out, I'm that guy who was like, I'm gonna work out for 18 hours straight and get the results. Right. But
Yeah.
even though I know now in hindsight, it's like the guy that works out 45 minutes a day for a week straight is going to get better results than the guy that does the 18-hour workout and then sits on his ass for 6 more days. Like, even though he spent more time in the gym, he probably made himself more like, if you could count that, more tired or whatever it would be. It's like, even though he went through the grueling process, the guy that just did 45 every day, he did like 6 hours throughout the week. It's like half as much duration, got like 3 times the results.
Yeah, and
Like I think,
keeping that balance and that discipline, I think in itself is I mean, keeping that balance is like a discipline in itself. Um, because I think some of the things you were touching on, and correct me if I'm wrong, for me, I struggle a lot being in this amazing ring with these amazing people with imposter syndrome.
mhm,
Like I toe that line. I see all these guys with like their Salomon shorts and like these amazing athletes who like are gonna do the race in probably half the time I am. And I just think to myself, do I really belong here? Um, and I think that when you have like those struggles with like food addiction or like you try to go back into your old habits, I think the intensity part of it kind of stems from like trying to feel like you belong, or there's always this constant thing in my head saying I feel like I'm not doing enough.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but I think that's the balance of trying to be like consistent with whatever you're doing and trying to like get to the next level, but at the same time like just like being, it's a discipline in itself. It's being disciplined in itself.
I think what you're saying there about like the idea or the feeling of like maybe not being enough, I think it's really powerful what you're talking about, because that's a lot of the time my like internal dialogue as well. It's like you haven't really contributed enough, you haven't really given
Yeah.
enough, like why do you expect these things, you're so entitled. Like I think those thoughts a lot. And I mean, there's probably truth behind it, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all privileged. If you live in North America, you're the top 1%. That's the way I
Oh,
look at it,
100%. Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like, and so for us to even bitch about half the things we bitch about, it's like, come
It's a
on, man.
privilege. It's a
Yeah.
privilege.
But that being said, we are now, all of us are kind of in this existential crisis of like, we've been given so much in our lives that the people that kind of do look at that introspectively, sometimes we look at it in the wrong way. Like I put a lot of thought into this and I don't think I've figured it out, but it's always interesting for me to think about, like, why do all of us kind of, once you start looking within, have this feeling of like, I've been given so much, whether it's from my parents or the place I live or the people around me. Why do I feel like I haven't given enough? Do I not contribute enough to the people around me? Or like, where's this feeling
Definitely.
stem from?
And I think one thing I learned, that's something, it's a lesson I've always learned in like the last half year or so, is that like those feelings can coexist. Like you can acknowledge that, we do have these amazing privileges to be able to even talk about these things, and um, that, we have a lot of comforts that a lot of people in the world don't have. But you can be grateful and feel blessed to have all those amazing things like water, food, a roof over our heads, the ability to think freely, and at the same time acknowledge that you have these feelings because they're there. And I think that at one point in my life, I don't know if you ever heard the term like toxic positivity, but it's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
um, I just told myself, like, I guess if I could describe what I told myself in one sentence, it was that first 18 years of my life sucked. I want to do everything I can to just feel good all the time.
Yeah.
And that to me was like another way of bottling things up. So I've learned that, going back to that last point, that you can accept that these are amazing things that we have, and like, you can feel blessed and show gratitude towards them, but at the same time acknowledge your feelings. Both of those things can coexist.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time as well, I think it's important to note that like it's kind of etched into our, I mean, everyone's got different beliefs of how we became the beings that we are. But if you believe in evolution, um, all of these things are kind of pre-programmed in us for a reason. So I think that there's not really a world or circumstances like in our environment that we could have without those feelings. I think that they're going to be there regardless. And it's more about like, well, why do I feel that and how can I deal with it? Like, I think a lot of our feelings like anxiety or those things are necessary. Like
Yeah.
they're pre-programmed kind of like chain reactions almost, from my understanding. I'm not a doctor, I'm a carpenter, so I'm just talking out my ass. But like it's like I think a lot of the times we forget, like we're like, why do I feel this way? I shouldn't feel this way. I should feel happy.
Yeah.
Everyone, and it's like, I don't think there's a world you can create where you don't feel that way. I think that that's a necessity. I think that we're supposed to feel those things. Like the whole like I am not enough thing, like that's where I've kind of drawn that conclusion. Like I think you're supposed to feel like, hey, I'm not contributing enough, because that's what makes you contribute more.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know like I think a lot of those things, we look at them and look, man, there's not much you can say about like, when you're looking and trying to tell a kid that, hey, it's a gift, you've been given this, or like, hey, this is a necessity. Like it's pretty tough to sell to a 9-year-old who feels suicidal.
Yeah.
But like it's just such a tough, weird place to navigate around, man.
It is. And there's always going to be those people who, that's an argument I've heard a lot of my life, going from like a lower income bracket to like a higher one.
Mm,
The argument I've always heard is that, like, you should be happy because you have this, this, and this. No, I think what you should be is you should be grateful that you have all those things, but that doesn't mean that you should no, that doesn't mean you should toss aside, cast away all those other feelings that you have just because you have those things, because those feelings are there. And like you said, they're a part of like they're supposed to be there. They're kind of what makes us contribute more, and it just goes back to the balance.
Yeah, and I think well, a lot of the times we say that to people as well. Like, and I like that the conversation's going this way, man. It's kind of contradictory to the way I usually speak. So I kind of like this, but I do believe this. Like I do think this stuff. And I say that because I am kind of one of those people that, a lot of my philosophy comes from like the pull up your bootstraps and fucking save yourself. But I think a lot of the times it's tough to kind of look at it that way because, we tell people, hey, you should be happy because you have X, Y, and Z, or you should be thankful or grateful because you have X, Y, and Z. And I agree with that. I agree with what you said. I think you said it beautifully. Like you can be grateful and still be unhappy with something because because you see room for improvement and you know where it can, and you think that that's within your abilities. So you act on it, which makes sense. But I think like the argument of like, hey man, you should be grateful for these three things is like not really a strong argument because it's not like humans are really we don't have like, it's not like we have like a box where it's like, okay, if you check off X, Y, and Z, I'll be happy and I'll be able to, like, you won't even survive if you have some things.
Yeah.
Like, let alone be happy, right? Like, that's like saying to somebody who's like starving, it's like, we'll be grateful you have water and oxygen. It's like, yeah, but I also need the food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm definitely grateful for the
That's
oxygen and
such
the
a great way
water,
to put it. That's
right? But
such a
it's
great way
like,
to put it.
I still need other things to even survive. And that's just surviving, man. Like, that's not even like, we're talking about being happy. Dude, that's a hard thing to achieve, man.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is. Like it's the whole Maslow's hierarchy thing, right? Like the food, the shelter, all those comforts. But I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I said, like I usually come from that philosophy. Like I consider myself one of those people that's like, come on, like, that's not a problem. This isn't a problem. Like I get called a victim blamer a lot, So I just I got to be able to just look at things. I like that the conversation's going that way. I like that. That's cool,
What
man,
is
because
what is a I never heard that. I may have heard that term, but what is a victim blamer by like definition?
well, it's definitely a thing. I just think it gets misused. So the example of a victim blamer would be like the douchebag that says like, "Oh, if that girl didn't want to be taken advantage of, she shouldn't
Oh,
have dressed
okay.
that way."
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean?
that. Yeah, that's
So
yeah.
it's like blaming the victim for their problem. And
Oh yeah, I just heard it called as victim shaming. Yeah, that's but similar thing. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I've been called that before because I mean, the way I look at it is this. I don't think anyone is responsible for the hand of cards that they've been dealt,
Yeah.
but they are responsible for how they play with them after. That's kind of the way I
It's
look
true.
at it. And yeah, so it's just interesting to kind of look at it. It's like this whole year I've been, and even doctors have had to explain this to me. Like this whole year has been a transformational shift because the first like I'd say like 70% of my life I was the victim of a lot of and a victim of none other than myself. I want to clarify that first. Like it's like I was of the mentality of a victim, even though I was so privileged. I had, next to no problems realistically. I dealt with the same issues that other people dealt with. There was nothing substantially messed up. And then I went through a shift where I flipped from that like zero accountability to like 120% of accountability. So then I started I would, that's where the victim shaming or victim blaming comes in, where it's like, no, you're responsible for everything. And
Okay,
so
I get it.
so this last like 6 months has been very transformational for me. Kind of shifting now back towards like, okay, maybe you're not responsible for everything, but you're also not powerless. Like it's kind of like I'm trying to find that happy medium in the middle,
Yeah, that's a balance in itself for sure. Um, and just going back to some of the other points that we were making about like um privilege and just kind of like I think this also ties in pretty well, but I think that I just had this on my mind, but like I've noticed that a lot of depression and anxiety for a lot of people comes from comparisons.
Yeah.
And the old school way of making those comparisons was our parents saying, like, see this kid, he's just living like this. And, he doesn't have all the things that you have, but he's happy.
Hmm.
And to me, that's kind of a fallacy in itself, because it's like everybody has like their own background, their own story, everyone has their own stakes. And the modern version of this we see is like those colorful square photos we see on Instagram, where you look at someone's life and you see like, oh, he's at the beach, he's in this luxury resort, um, he's doing this amazing like 100-mile run, and like he's just like smiling with all his friends, and they don't see the things that go on in between all that. And I try to make it a point, even on my social media, like I make a lot of posts about like the things that I'm going through, because I want people to see all sides of everything. That like, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed human being. I'm trying to work on myself every single day, and nobody's a harsher critic of myself than I am.
Yeah, dude. And one of the things I liked when I pulled up your profile, when I first started looking at your profile, is like, everybody in the fitness industry, whether it's like in the gym or running or jujitsu or martial arts, whatever, they're always posting the pictures or the videos of like, here's me winning this race. Here's me
Yeah.
tapping this guy out. Here's me doing a 3-plate bench or a 5-plate deadlift or whatever. And it's like when I opened up your profile, it's like the pictures of the videos are like you in the dirt. Like it's like, yo, I'm running right now. Like this is me running. There is the occasional like, yo, I won this or I finished this, I completed this. And I think that there's a
Yeah.
place for that. I think that there is a place for that, because I think talking about your winning is huge for yourself and for others, because it sets the example, it sets precedent within yourself. I think that there's, the important Goggins talks about his cookie jar kind of thing. But it's like, what I liked about your profile is like the pictures are always like you in like the toque or like, like geared up, and you're not wearing like you said, like the cool split shorts that other guys wear. Like, like you're out there in the grind era in like sweats, and you're just like, yo, I'm out here grinding. Like it doesn't look pretty. I'm not in my full Under Armour fucking sponsored outfit. That's what I appreciated so much about your posts.
Yeah, and you're 100% like, I have another 100-miler in 5 days. You're 100% when I post photos of that, I'm 100% like going to tell my pacer, like, hey, I'm going through this is true pretty often. I'm going through a nauseous moment, or I'm going through a low. You mind taking a photo of this?
That's
So
fucking
everyone could
hilarious.
see that I'm just messed up, Like, and I think it helps people because they realize that like it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And sometimes, no matter how many times we say that to people, they won't realize it until they actually see it. And I think also just, you're right, there has to be a balance between like a photo saying like, look, I got this buckle, versus look, like I'm going through the struggle, because it shows people that you can overcome anything. And I think one of the things that I try to do, I want to do to indirectly help and impact people, is show them that I'm not this athletically inclined person, that I started from rock bottom when it came to my fitness. I was pre-diabetes when I was 18. I was obese. I struggled with food addiction. But I'm out here doing these things, and everybody can do things of their own relative. Like you go out and get that 5K, you go out and like be the best engineer you can be. You go out and like be the best mountain biker, rock climber you can be. Just, you can be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, man. And even that transformational shift as well. I can't believe I didn't even touch on this before, but it's like this just kind of sparked a new fire in my brain. I was just thinking about this. That transformational process from like a food addict to an ultra marathon runner. Like talk to me about that, because just right off the bat, how many of your social situations when you were a food addict, how many of your social situations were based around food? Like whether you're going to see like how many first dates were like, let's go to a restaurant? How many like, yo, we should meet up with the boys, and you go and grab beers and wings or whatever? Like was a lot of your social life wrapped around food?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my social life was, well, first off, my social life when I was the first 18 years of my life was pretty non-existent. I was like a the closeted, most closeted introvert. Like there was a phase where my going back to my depression where like I didn't talk for almost like the entire year. I would barely say any words at all.
Mhm.
Um, but that doesn't mean that the food addiction wasn't there. A lot of it was like being shut indoors and like snacking on like all kinds of things, eating fast food all the time, almost like uh maybe like 6 7 meals of the week. You know, I was just getting like fast food and like having a can of soda a day. So that was definitely, and then even when the social situations happened, they were like centered around like eating. Even when I was like unhealthily skinny, that's where the trap was, where I was like, I just had this whole pizza pie, so now I'm gonna go play basketball on the court for like 4 hours until like I literally felt like there was a hole in my stomach because I felt like I was exercising to kind of deal with that, or to like I was exercising to kind of balance that off, offset that out. Where instead of exercising for my mental health, like we were talking about earlier.
Right, right. So it kind of like was very similar, because what I was going to ask you about is if you had kind of people from your past kind of make you feel like kind of guilty for wanting to improve yourself. But I feel like maybe for your struggle,
Yeah.
I was projecting a bit. Maybe it's more of like an internal thing for you, because I dealt with more of like the external pressures.
It was internal, but um, there definitely was like outside struggles as far as like people noticing that like I'm doing these things to improve myself and kind of like trying to drag me back into that hole with them. Almost like a you're better than us kind of thing. But a
Mhm.
lot of it also was like projecting from, I think, doing extra projection from things like that happened, because sometimes we take those external things and we add it to our internal, and it just creates like this extra level of like just like layers of projection.
Yeah, because I like, I mean, I'm not sober, but I don't drink very often, and like I'll have maybe like 2 3 glasses of wine throughout the year. Like it's kind of like a Christmas Day kind of thing or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's, for me. But when I did stop drinking, I definitely had to stop drinking like socially. Like now it's just like I'll have a glass of wine with my mom kind of thing. Like my girlfriend's sober, so it helps me out a lot. But I remember when I stopped drinking, I was that party guy. I masked a lot of my depression by pretending that I could never be touched by negative emotions. Like I was that like loud, joking class clown party guy. And
Yeah.
so when I stopped drinking, I would always have these kind of friends of mine that would be like, oh, just come out and have one with the boys, like for old time's sake, or
Mhm.
and or just come out and hang out with us and you don't have to drink. But like I'm somebody I'm a sponge, man. I'll soak up anything around me. So like if I'm in a group where there's like, especially as like a young adolescent, like now I'm a little bit different, I'll just leave, or like I'm definitely like a lot less patience for it now. But
Yeah.
I struggled a lot with like, I'm this social guy. Maybe I should go out. And I felt guilty all the time. I felt like I was like, for trying to make these kind of changes in my life. Like, did you ever deal with that? Like just that guilt of like,
Yeah, definitely. Like I think for me, I did have similar like groups that actually had like one group of people at one point tell me like, I told him like, look, I have a long run on Saturday, so I'll stick around, but I'm not really gonna drink. And I said, it's just a run, you know, it's just a
yeah,
run. Like to me, I just realized that that is always gonna be there. You're always, but we're all, it's complicated in the sense that like we're all evolving all the time. So people are gonna come and go, and these last couple years, especially with becoming like sober, especially with like taking on this intense lifestyle of like ultra running, which requires a lot of time on your feet, a lot of training. I've had to cut off a lot of connections. Some of them were just distanced away. Some of them I realized were toxic, and I had to just, put the hammer on it and just cut it off.
When sorry, I should have asked in the very beginning. Are you pressed for time at all? Do you have any like time constraints or anything like that?
Uh, no, no, not right now.
Okay,
At
cool,
least not
cool.
for next hour.
Okay, well, I don't know if we're going to be here for another hour. We can. I don't really have
Oh, yeah.
too much going on, but I think I might have to jump on a call at like 1:30 ish, but I think we're
1:30
good for,
sounds good.
yeah, I think we're good for a little bit more time, but
Cool.
um I was going to say, like, when you started to have to change your social circles, did you find like most people you had to cut off, or do you think that because like I mean, I've seen both in my own life where like I've had to have some tough conversations, but for the
Mhm.
most part, I'd say in the last couple of years of kind of transforming my life, I'd say 80% of the people that were like quote unquote cut out of my life just kind of gravitated away. Like it was like I didn't even have to have a
Yeah.
tough conversation. And people are always like, "Oh, I don't know how to cut this friend out, or I don't know how to cut this group of people out of my life." And a lot of the times I'm like, dude, you don't even have to. Just do you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what happened to me. A lot of people just gravitated out of my life. Whether it was something I did, which for me, a big thing was like boundaries. I didn't used to be very good with that, but now it's just like for some people, I had to set boundaries. For maybe a few people, like three, four people, I had to actually cut off, and the rest of them kind of just gravitated towards away from me, like distanced away. Like I think there's layers to it. Um, there's certain people that I used to be really close to that are just like acquaintances now. There's certain people that I didn't used to be close to that we've gotten closer because of the way things are now. And there's also obviously the new people that you meet because there's like millions of people on this planet. Like, um, you might think that you've met like your best friend in the whole world, and then like in the next year or something like that. Like for me, that happened. Like one of my somebody I thought was like who's like my best friend since high school. You know, is we haven't talked in like months. Like it's just the distance that's happened. And then like somebody I met 6 months ago is all of a sudden we're like brothers, because of we have this new lifestyle together, this ultra lifestyle.
Man, it's so beautiful. I love that you said that because for a long time in my life, I struggled with even like the idea of like a best friend. You know what I mean? Like I definitely like I have got my a couple group, like I've got probably like 3, 4 dudes that know exactly who they are and what I'm talking about. But I just think back to like how many friendships I've had where I'm like, bro, you're like a brother to me. And then 6 months later, I don't even fucking, I never talk to them. I never like how many people where you're like, bro, ride or die, man. I trust you with my life. Like, dude, I trust you with and then it's like, I don't even talk to half those people.
There was one person, one of my coworkers, who's like a girl that's like 6 years older than me. She was like a platonic female friend for like the longest, like the last 2, 3 years of my life. And then I realized we're kind of like distance now, like we still care for each other, but we're distance now because I realized that a lot of times that we were together, we were drinking ourselves silly because we were
Mm.
dealing with so many things. And I realized that that energy was also bad for me in a way. But there's a point where like she was calling me little bro and I was calling her big sis. And now we don't even talk like maybe like once every 4 or 5 weeks, maybe just like check on each other. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I know. I've had very similar relationships with both men and women, like where it's like, yo, you're like a brother to me, or like you're like a sister to me, or I trust you, like or like I'll do like literally like when you work with someone as well, like there's other things where it's like, yo, I got your back, and
Yeah.
yeah, and there's just so many times you look back and you're like, yo, I wouldn't trust that person to hold my coffee right now. You know what I mean? Like there's so many, and maybe it's different for you, but there's like I've had a lot of those experiences where, especially like, you know, uh, with a lot of other guys where it's like, yo, I got you. I trust you with my life, bro. Like, it's like, yo, I wouldn't trust you driving my truck for 5 minutes at this point. Like, and it's got nothing to do with you. It's more about how easily I trusted people before. Like, it's like, and maybe that just speaks to like who I am, about how open I am and I let people in very easily. I was a trusting person, but I don't think it's good to be the opposite and not let anyone in either by any means. I'm just saying that I think everyone kind of deals with their own kind of, issues that way. It's just interesting to see like social circles are always it's a very good excuse, social circles of like, oh, I'm going to lose my friends, or what if they think this of me, or what if they think that of me? And it's like, well, I mean, social circles are fluid at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah.
like,
That
I think,
like people will, yeah, they're fluid is a good point, because like we said, that people will kind of like, your relationships will evolve with them. The layers, like it'll be like out here and then it'll be in here, like you'll be close, you'll be far away. So I definitely agree with that.
and it's just interesting. Like, sorry, I had to clear my throat cough there. I didn't want to be on the mic, but it's interesting. Yeah, like even like my girlfriend, the girl I'm dating, we've been dating like over a year now. And we were friends for like 5, 6 years before that. And like we like worked at the same company. We would chat here and there, help each other out, like, the occasional like we hang out kind of deal, but we were never like, we were just friends. Like we were just always like friends. We would maybe go to parties together or whatever. And then after years and years, that relationship developed to like, hey, this is where I'm going in my life. Hey, I'm going similar
Yeah.
places in my life. We should, connect and hang out. And then there's other people that I literally worked with every single day. Like we're talking like 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, who used to, we'd made tons of money together, taking a bunch of risks together, doing things that create bonds. And now I never talk to these people. Never.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Um, it's a good point that you made about like going places in life too. Like sometimes your relationship with someone is predicated on whether you're riding the same wave or not. And right now, two of the people I'm really close with, the reason I am is because I feel like we're all riding the same wave. Um, but I've learned that people will come in and out of your life, and those who are meant to stay in some facet or another will stay. And I've sort of shifted it to kind of in more of an internal mindset. Like I know, like at one point, like I said, I was a people pleaser, so I did everything I could to make sure that people would stay in my life. That extended to relationships too. um but now I know for a fact that like I would never compromise myself to keep somebody around.
yeah, I that hits with me as well, especially actually my I don't consider like I consider like a couple, like I'd say I've had 3 girlfriends in my life. And those are like the people I'd say that, I definitely like was considering them of a partner, to be a partner. And I just think just to kind of look back at that, like I think a lot of the times we attach ourselves to, the people pleaser mentality. And especially in relationships, it's definitely manifested in a lot of other areas, whether it be like professional, at work, or in friendships. But I think relationships a lot of the time on both sides, men and women, do this. But I think like that, just that people pleaser thing of like not really either continuing to do bad habits, or not say the things that you feel like you should say, or not do the things that you feel like you should be doing. Like
Yeah.
I remember that just not really acting organically. That's the way I feel like a lot of about. I can think of one relationship I had in specific where, I wouldn't treat people the way I would actually want to treat them. I wouldn't speak the way I would want to speak to people. I wouldn't, and I ended up like mistreating a lot of my friends, or mistreating a lot of just like random strangers. Like there was so many times where um to try, and because a precedent had been set, to try and not get myself into a situation, you know, maybe be rude to a stranger or what have you. And it's like, man, there's a lot of times where I look back and I'm like, that's not who I am. And I really don't like being that guy. And, you know, there's a lot of times where I had to look back and be like, you know, you're spending a lot of time trying to make this person happy for what? Just so that they'll stay with you so you can be happy, but you're not even happy. Like, why do you even want to be in this relationship? Because it'll bring you happiness, but you're in it and you're not happy.
Yeah, it makes no sense when you say it like that, you know?
That's what I had to think about, right? Like, it's like, why am I even in this relationship? Because I want happiness.
Yeah, like it's either happiness or it's, you know, it's societal pressure. Like like in our society, it's a lot of like, hey, all your cousins are married or they have like wives or something like that. Like, what's up with you, kind of thing. What's the problem with her? She's like a marathoner, she's an engineer. Like, what's the problem, you know? But yeah, like,
And the age thing too.
yeah.
And I don't know your age. I'm ballpark guess that you're like kind of like late 20s, early 30s. That's kind of where I pin you at.
20. Yeah, it's a good guess.
So yeah, I'm 20. I'll be 27 this summer. So we're like similar age, right? And when you get to the end of your 20s, early 30s, like a lot of our friends are, it's like, oh, you don't own a house and have kids and you're not like, you know, like I'm at 26, 27 is where a lot of my buddies started getting married. And three of my friends, three different couples are pregnant right now. And I'm like, yo, I'm renting with my buddy and I have a girlfriend. Like, that's where I'm at. Like that's what, you know, so it's like, I think a lot of it has to do with age. Like we have this societal pressure of like, you don't have your shit together?
Yeah, I call them societal constructs. They're just like, you need to have a house by a certain point, like you need to have a girlfriend, a wife, kids. Um, and then it's like, and then they'll say, like, for all the things you want to do, they'll say, oh, you know, like when you retire, you can do it during your golden years. What, like when my bones are old and rickety and I have arthritis? If I even make it to that point. Like,
yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, man, I could get hit by a car tomorrow, man. Who knows?
Yeah, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Who said tomorrow's guaranteed?
That's beautiful, man. That's so sick. So, yeah, I feel like there's that pressure that to be that people pleaser. Did you have a point where you kind of had a conversation either with yourself or with someone else where you're like, yo, I'm done with this people pleasing bullshit? Do you still deal with that? Do you still like where does that fall for you?
Well, I had a internal conversation with myself, a lot of it during these ultra marathons, because it was not like a linear process where I said, A, I'm a people pleaser, and like B, now I'm not, now fuck everybody, you know. It was kind of like just like
That's
with,
how I am, man. I'm knee-jerk reactions. I go from like, oh, I'm this, never mind, I'm that.
well, just like with anything like obesity, mental health, anything, like people think it's like this to this, before, after, but it's like this, you know, with like every time you go up, you get like a little 1% better. And then like, you know, like things are all over the place. It's just work that you have to do every day. But I think during ultras was when I really just opened up and became more vulnerable to myself and realized you have a lot of time to think. So you start to realize like, hey, like, you know, like, why are you even with this person? Like, why do you have this friendship? You're not happy. Why are you even in this relationship? You know, like you're trying to be in it to be happy, but you're not happy trying to make it work, you know? And I think that people pleasing is something that I'm always going to struggle with. Like, I'm always just going to want everybody to, after the first, you know, it goes back to seeking that validation that I didn't get in the first 18 years of my life, kind of being an outcast type of person, an introvert. I'm always going to have that part of me, that percentage of me that wants everyone to like me. But now I've come to the point where I realized that it's like that quote, I forget who said it, but it was something like, a friend of everybody is a friend of nobody.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. I'm gonna find that quote. I like that.
So like, you know, just being honest with myself and with my friends, just trying to have like mano a mano, just like, or like face to face dialogue, and just telling them the things that I don't like, and just accepting the fact that like some people are going to leave if they don't like what you're putting down. Um, and just kind of ebbing and flowing with that, and realizing that that's okay as long as you're not compromising yourself, because I think the bottom line is that's where a lot of unhappiness comes from, when you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like that we see that all the time. Like I feel like that all the time, man, because and it's something that frustrates me, man, and that's something that I could go off on forever, because I feel like a part of that is it's got to do with social media, and in terms of like I don't think that people even have their own morals and values anymore, man. I think they just
Yeah.
adopt them from what they think they should say or what they think they should think, or
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of it gets hijacked on both and on every, I wouldn't even say both sides, because I don't think it's a two-sided thing. I think it goes in every spectrum you could possibly measure it. Like we're always like that, you know, every thing that comes up, you'd want to wait to see what other people say about that thing.
Yeah.
So I think like to be even able to live within your own values, you'd have to have a value system or a moral code, which takes introspection, right? Like it's like kind of like you said, I had conversations with myself, like just thinking about, you know, doing a marathon, 5 hours of running, like 5 hours by yourself is like tough for someone that, you know, I tried to avoid any time by myself for most of my life. Like going out and partying and being in the social group is like, that's what I'm avoiding, that quiet time. You know what I mean? And so now when I have it, I kind of relish in it. Like what you said, like, you know, when you're running for 5 hours, there's only so many thoughts you can have until your mind starts wandering of like, why are you doing this shit, man? What are you doing? You know, like, what the fuck's
Yeah.
going on? Like, what? Why'd you spend so much money on food? This, you know, like all
That's
those little thoughts
inevitable.
creep
Yeah.
in, right? Like it's like that internal conversation is so key, man. It's so beautiful, man. I like you said that. Real quick before I let you go, I had two questions for you. Actually, no, I'm only gonna ask one, man. What do you listen to while you run? Are you a listener? Do you have headphones on? Do you?
Oh, yeah. Me, I'm a music hoarder, so I listen to all music that I like. Recently I've been listening to a lot of 80s like synth music.
Gangster, dude.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And then sometimes I'll tune it up to hip hop, just like um sometimes I'll go straight into like kind of like new metal and like grunge and like that stuff. So it all just depends on my mood. And sometimes I'll throw on a podcast and listen to other ultra runners or something that'll teach me something. And yeah, just everything all over the board.
I like that, man. That's so funny, man. This whole week, I've been listening to like 80s hair bands. And
Yeah.
and it's so funny that you said that, like the 80s music. And then the like literally my bread and butter, like the music I listen to most of the time is like 90s rock and grunge. So it's cool you said those things, man. I don't know if you looked through my profile or not before you said that, but that's gangster, dude. The second you said the 80s music, I'm like, yes, my dude.
Dude,
But
definitely.
yeah, dude, the 80s and 90s music is like where I live for the most part. That's sick, man. Um, yeah, I listen to audiobooks when I do like anything that's like that. Like if it feels like, okay, I just got to maintain this for the next couple hours, it's like a, because like construction's kind of like that sometimes as well. Like you're just doing mindless labor for hours on end. And it's like, I'm gonna throw on an audiobook. Like that's where I'm at. Like I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. I dude, it even kind of was like startling for me because I got a 52-hour long audiobook that I finished in less than a week. And it's like, that's a lot of listening, man. That's a lot of listening.
Wow.
Yeah, I crushed it, dude. You got to figure like 8-hour shifts and then doing workouts after. So I was listening for like over 10 hours a day. I
Wow.
got addicted to this one book, man. But before I let you go, I want to, I'm going to give you like plugs for like your Instagram in the description of this. Like for anyone that's watching or listening, it'll be like in the description so they can go and check you out. But give yourself like kind of like a plug. Tell people where they can find you, if not on Instagram, or if you have anything else going on, like this is your moment to do all your marketing. Give yourself a little plug. Tell people where they can find you. You're running in 2 days. No, you're starting your fundraiser in 2 days.
I'm starting my fundraiser
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, which is April 4th. April
Yeah.
4th. Uh, for RIchstone Family, we're going to be raising $25,000 through my 2022 races, which ends in October with the Moab 240-mile race.
That's disgusting, man.
A bunch of stuff going on, like a race in Peru that I'm doing. I'm going to be through hiking Iceland in July. All of that is going to be plugged in related to RIchstone Family. And if you want to find me, my profile is on Instagram is the Aum Gandhi. It's the AUMGANDHI.
Yeah, I love that, man. I was like combing through. I'm like, man, I gotta make a cool Gandhi joke when he jumps in the chat. And then I just completely didn't even think of it. I completely blanked and didn't think of it. But that's man, that's so cool, man. I love your shit. And hearing all about the stuff that you're doing, man, it inspires me, because hearing about people like you, man, it's like, I gotta do more. I already felt like I got to do more, bro, but now I feel like I got to do more. Like just hearing about those things, man. If you ever come up to Vancouver, if you ever come up to Canada, man, you definitely have to let me know. But
I think I will at some point. If I told Such that I'd be there for his run across Canada. So
fuck, you guys should just
yeah.
run and race each other and meet. You
So
you should
Such
run up to Vancouver. He should run down south, man, and see where you guys meet. Race.
Oh man, that would be ridiculous. But I could see Such agreeing to that.
Yeah, dude, he's wicked, man. I just met him a couple weeks ago, and he came over. Like our first conversation was in my living room, and he's such a fucking cool human being, man.
Yeah, I love him. I've always talked to him over Instagram, but once I'm able to meet him in person, it's gonna be rad. It's gonna be
Yeah,
rad.
he's a legend, man. Fuck, maybe one day all three of us could sit down and have a conversation, dude. That'd be so sick.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah.
That'd be epic, man. I gotta update my studio and get on some running game, man. I gotta get more like you guys do. But I'll let you go. I won't take up, out of respect for your time, I'll let you go, man. But dude, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Thank you for just even chatting with me, because just this conversation alone, I'm like, man, that fired me up.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I'm thankful, man. I'm grateful to have you here, dude. I appreciate it. I'm excited for round two in the future if you're down. But
Oh,
I know you'll agree
absolutely.
to it right now, but if you're actually down, I'm excited, man.
Well, just from everything that I've gained from this conversation and your perspective, I already see myself being down for that. So,
Hell yeah, man. Well, oh, the last thing I gotta say, I gotta compliment you, bro. I gotta say this. And this is important to say, actually. It's interesting that you noted yourself or identified yourself as an introvert and then held a conversation for an hour and a half straight, because there's people that I've tried to fucking talk to, not only just on this podcast, but just in real life, where you talk to them for like 6 minutes and you're like, I never want to fucking relive that again. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
dude,
Well, it's like Goggins says in his podcast too, like he feels it all the time, like that introvertness. I'm like, even like an hour and a half in, like maybe like an hour in, I was starting to feel it. And those are things that can coexist, like me feeling that way, but also having this amazing conversation that I'm drawing from. But yeah, that's always there. It's just work that I put in over the years, throwing myself in the fire into public speaking and just talking.
keep it up, man. Because if you're an introvert that can do that, there's a lot of self-proclaimed extroverts that can't fucking hold a conversation for like 5 minutes, man. So that's if you're putting in effort, it doesn't seem like it, man. I gotta say that. Like you're killing it, dude.
I
That's pretty
appreciate
wicked.
it.
Not a lot of people can hold conversations like that. So I don't know if you've done like a lot of podcasts in the past, but you killed it, man.
I've done podcasts. I didn't know how naturally it was going to come to me when I got on podcasts, but yeah, I used to go to speech therapy when I was in elementary school, going up to high school. So it's been a journey, but um, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Oh yeah, dude. That's beautiful, man. That's a beautiful way to end out on this. Thank you so much for being here, man. Go out and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have you run already, or are you going to run right now?
I've already run.
Fuck yeah, dude. Now you're just kicking your feet up and relaxing for the rest of the day.
Yep, just kicking my feet up and relaxing. Heading out on a work trip in 3, 4 hours, so got to get on the plane.
Oh shit, dude. Well, I'll let you relax a little bit before you do that. That's stressful in and of itself for a guy like I get stressed in airports, man. But that's it, man. Thank you so much. Much love and peace out, brother. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, much love to you, Mark. Thank
Take
you so
care.
much for having me on. And this is a
Thank you
great
as well.
conversation.
Take care, man. Take care.